Welcome to the Optimal Bio podcast. At Optimal Bio, we don't just balance your hormones, we balance your whole body. Our conversations range from nutrition to medicine with an emphasis on wellness tips to support your health journey. If you like what you hear, find us on the web at optimalbio.com and follow the podcast so you don't miss an episode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Optimal Bio podcast. Today, we are honored to have Pete Yanity, sports anchor at WSPA in Greenville, South Carolina. To full disclosure, Pete is a great friend of mine. We spent high school together in Ridgefield, Connecticut, and he taught me everything I know about being behind the screen, which is not a lot since I'm rarely behind the screen. But today, I get to interview an expert in the field. So, Pete, welcome.
Thank you. I don't know if the word honored has ever been used in an introduction. So now I'm honored. So that makes two of us.
So if you wouldn't mind just sharing with the audience how you got your start and how eventually you got to Greenville, South Carolina.
A little bit before you and I met as high schoolers in Ridgefield, Connecticut, when I was 11 years old, I was in sixth grade. And I knew this is exactly what I was going to do with my life. There literally was no plan B. My oldest sister had a boyfriend in college, and her and my alma mater, as you know, ended up being the same. And I went out and visited her, and I saw him. He was doing radio at a basketball game, and I thought, wow, that's unbelievable. And then I used to, as a kid, go to a lot of games with my dad, and we'd go to this one college not far from where you and I grew up on a regular basis. And after the game, he'd go down and hobnob with friends of his, and he knew some of the coaches. And I would just watch what was going on press row and how guys were, doing post-game shows, and I was fascinated by it. And as a sports fan growing up who consumed a lot of sports on TV and radio, I just had a feeling that this was something I could do. And then high school, had some opportunities. We had a TV studio in our high school that had been in mothballs until our sophomore year in high school. And we heard about this thing called cable TV coming into our quaint little hometown. And through that, we thought, let's put a TV station together. And we did that. And only while you and I were there, broadcast on tape delay inside of the school for the cafeteria, the library, people in classrooms, whatever, could see it, what they call blue wiring. But we set the stage to have a TV station coming out of the high school to go on the local cable system. And then went to a college that, it was perfect for me because I'd grown up with it, but it had everything I needed to kind of build the foundation. And also in our hometown, a little weekly newspaper, got involved with them and pretty much spent all of my mid-teen years I always mark December 12th, 1979, when you and I were calling a Ridgefield High School 52-51 win over Naugatuck High, one of two wins that year for that team. And I always mark that as the day this all started for me. And pretty much from mid-teen years until sitting here right now, I've been focused on this career and building its foundation and growing it. And I've been blessed with some unbelievable opportunities along the way.
So I have to ask, as a kid, most of us dream of being college or professional athletes. And you obviously, at a very early age, thought that broadcasting was going to be your calling in life. Did you ever think that, or when did you think that playing was going to be less important than being part of the broadcast world?
When I was a junior in high school and the foundation of the TV station came together, and I thought, you know what, I'm not going to play football in the fall. And I wasn't good enough to make the other teams. And I thought, I'm going to focus my senior year on doing the best I can, producing telecasts and shows and calling games and the little newscasts we did each week and all of that. I knew at that age, I knew that was it. I got to really do this because this is something I could do and make a living at doing. And a lot of people always, when I talk to them, they'll say, so when did you get in the business? Why did you get in the business? And I often say, really, the business got into me. It literally was something I couldn't not do. And, it kind of pulled me along when I needed it to pull me along. But really, in my business, as I often tell a lot of young folks I talk to who are getting in, this is a crazy industry that I'm in. There's something a little bit wrong with me mentally. I get that. I admit that. But when this is in me and when it's in you and when that line between your normal life and your work life is very much blurred because you just, you got to get a job done and you work all day. I've I've gone many weeks, I've often gone 90 straight days without taking a day off. And I had some downtime or whatever, but for part of at least one day in each of those weeks, I was doing something because that's what I had to do to continue to build. So, but yeah, long answer to a short question. I realized my junior year of high school playing was done, and now it was time to focus on this.
So obviously you're a pioneer, in high school. You started this whole thing up, and I'm assuming during that time you're, emulating a certain broadcast, on the networks at some point in time, or, there's a famous broadcaster that you're probably looking at as well. So who are those shows or those people that, you tried to model after when you were a kid?
And they're not necessarily the ones that we were accustomed to seeing, on a regular basis. There were a lot of obscure guys, the team that I followed and have forever. And you would get on my case about listening to on a crackly AM radio signal at night. Some of those guys, I kind of learned foundational stuff listening to them. I used to listen to a station out of Cleveland, and the guy who did the Cleveland Cavaliers games, from a play-by-play standpoint, he helped me with a lot of foundations. And listening to him, a guy named Joe Tate, who left us a few years ago, listening to him is when I started doing radio basketball, first in college, and then when I started doing Clemson radio in 2003 and 4 for basketball, especially. Those foundational things of basket scored, give time and score immediately, that kind of stuff, just kind of got in me. I did learn early on in this business from just talking to people. And again, I was one of these, and you were around me. I mean, I was, basically, other than having the word dork on my forehead, I was totally a geek about this business. I did learn early on, just try to be the first version of you. And that's the same message I give. I cannot tell you how many, about 10 years ago, and just over the years, I've had either men or women tell me, well, I want to be, this person or that person. Erin Andrews has had an unbelievable career, unbelievable talent. Okay. Erin Andrews did a great job of being the first version of her. I had too many people come and say, I want to be the next version of Erin Andrews, to which I would say she would be, I would think, flattered by that, but I think she would also tell you, be the best version of yourself and just try to become great doing what you are, who you are. So I never tried to really impersonate anybody, because I don't think that's legit. Now, there are times where, and any broadcaster, we're human beings, that in an amplified form of ourselves, we can kind of, as we call it, sound like Ron Radio. And I've got a very good, eye in the sky, my wife, who will tell me if she sees some of my stuff, you kind of want a little Ron Radio there, and I'll know to ramp it back and try to be more human.
So you go to Ohio University, and then what are you doing there? Are you calling all the basketball games? Are you doing baseball? Are you doing pretty much everything sports related there?
So and when I went out there, I made sure I checked out just to visit in the summer before going into our senior year. And then you and I were getting ready to go to a party on Halloween night in the fall of 1980 as seniors in high school. And the mail came that afternoon, and it was "Welcome, Bobcat." I literally got accepted on Halloween night before we went to a party. And off of this form, if you forget that party, I'll remind you of it at another time. But anyway, knew exactly what they had to offer. Having grown up with the school, and my dad had gone there, my oldest sister had gone there. We had visited, I had family in town. I knew some folks who could also help me, but I was literally up working at the radio and TV station there, which were really, it wasn't your typical college radio and TV station. The radio stations were on an AM, pretty small signal AM, but the FM was 50,000 watts. And in the world of FM, I mean, that meant that you could get us into West Virginia. We were located in Athens, Ohio, about 37 miles from Parkersburg, West Virginia. You could get us in northern Kentucky and up into Ohio. And then the TV stations were 2 UHF channels. They were public stations, but it was channel 20, channel 44, and their reach was unbelievable. And as cable was starting to penetrate, I had one of the fortunate things in my career is that cable, probably brought me into more homes working there, and also in one of the jobs I had in West Virginia and up here too, because, when you're in mountain terrain areas, TV signals aren't all that great. But anyway, I got to college and I hit the ground running. I went to work for the athletic department in their sports information office. I wanted to learn more about how it worked from that side of things. Was working at the radio and TV station. By the middle of my freshman year, I was cleared to be able to anchor sports on the 10 o'clock news we did each night, and we would take weeks of those. there was a production company that was kind of forming. And again, I'd been working TV. I knew how these things worked. I had done tape delayed telecasts for my last 2 years of high school. And within the College of Communication that I was in, that was forming. And that led to me doing games all over the Midwest. I was driving out on a Saturday morning after doing a game on those radio stations I talked about, a high school game on a Friday night. I was getting in a car and driving to places like Muncie, Indiana, or on a Friday night, I was driving up to Mount Pleasant, Michigan to do our college's games. So if it was a Saturday football game, we'd do the game, 3 or 4 cameras on tape delay, and then we'd come back, they'd edit them together, and then it would air on the cable system the next night. On a Friday night, we did Athens High School, which now has an alumnus that has not only taken the NFL by storm, but now has the biggest contract in NFL history, Joe Burrow, but many years after I was doing their games. We would do their games on Friday all around southeastern Ohio. And then from a radio and TV standpoint, I was anchoring usually 3 weeks a quarter. We were on quarters, not semesters, so we had 3 quarters a year. At least 3 weeks a quarter. I was usually staying during breaks for many weeks we had a really long Christmas break, so I'd usually stay 4 weeks during that and then come home. Did that after my freshman year. And during spring break, I didn't go to Fort Lauderdale or Daytona Beach. I stayed and I worked. And but anyway, I was doing sportscasts, and then I was doing a bunch of radio sportscasts. And a lot of times, 2 or 3 days a week, I'd be getting up at 5:30 in the morning, going to do the morning because there were like 4 sportscasts. And I just thought, again, the more the better. You know, you can, if you want to be really good at basketball, someone can sit you down and they can tell you all about it and show you it and show you charts, but you get better by playing. And you get better in this craft of what I do by doing it and by talking and by writing and by living it and by experiencing it and by learning what it's like to be in a news conference with folks that, you know, may be hard on reporters, but asking them questions. And I just, you know, I feel like if I've done anything right, it was at least the foundation I built to set myself up. And you know, it kind of set myself up to be able to hit a lot of markers pretty early in my career.
So is the industry like that today where, you know, you're encouraging college kids, for example, to go out and do every single game, drive all over the place, do the local stuff, or is it different now? I
think the opportunities are still there. They're better than ever. So my son works in the industry, but he's now pretty much part of the digital part of the industry. No, I always say in any field, if you want to be, you know, if you want to get as close to excellence as possible, or at least strive for it, if you want to play the game, get in the game. And I would say to, you know, anyone trying to get into this field or get into any field, if I were going to get into the business world, okay, I'd probably go be a business major at school. And I used to see the business majors, you know, those were the ones who were always at the dorm when I'd come back, and I was rarely at my dorm. And they were just kind of hanging out because they knew that there'd probably be an interview on their campus. That's great. And they'd get hired by their company. But if I were a business major, I'd be thinking, okay, I know I need to get a job, but how else can I, you know, grow myself outside of my industry? Because maybe I can find the next great opportunity too. So that would be my thought. If I were, you know, if I were getting into medicine, and if I were pre-med and knowing I had med school and I were undergrad, I'd still be trying to do something practically in that. Because hey, what if you learn you don't like it? And that's the other thing about this business, and why I always tell folks, get involved with it in high school. Learn how to write, learn how to talk. Go work for, you know, newspapers like we knew them. Kind of that's changed, but now you have websites. But make sure, you know, I've had some people who've gotten jobs right out of college, didn't do much in this industry in college, got a job in the industry, and they hate it. And it's because, well, in college, you should have learned if you loved it or hated it. But I would say you can never learn enough about the career you're going to be in at a young age. And I would say this career first and foremost, but in most careers. In addition to learning the craft of broadcasting, doing all these games, driving all over the place, are there other things that you're learning about yourself at that same time? You know, I learned early on that I'm a type A personality, even though I maybe don't project that, that I can be a real annoying individual to others without meaning to be, but trying to always be gentle-hearted and kind. And I learned that, you know what, and I learned this at a really young age while in college, I can multitask probably with anybody. And I also learned that I can ad-lib with anybody. But multitasking was big because to fund our little jaunts to the DeKalb, Illinois and Oxford, Ohio's of the world, we had to go out and raise money. So I had to go knock on doors of local merchants in the greater Athens area and so on. trying to prepare for games, and I'm doing these games, but I'm also, and there was a point where I actually attended classes while I was in college too. And benefiting from an excellent education as a poli-sci minor and a broadcast journalism major, it helped that a lot of my poli-sci classes, I'd already done that in high school. So it was like, oh, I remember that. And, one of the things I did was in our newsroom at our radio and TV station, we had an entity of Ohio. We were the distribution point for Ohio Associated Press Radio. In a small, just in a nutshell, what that was, students, you would work like a 3-hour shift from 6 a.m. all the way up until like 9 p.m. You do them in 3-hour shifts. I think they paid us like $1.67 an hour. But you would call around to radio stations and whatever interviews they had, clips of interviews. I once interviewed the governor on the phone. You do interviews with lawmakers. You would then record that and then you distribute it. You put it in a place where other radio stations could go get it. I think they used to call us and we'd send it out. So I showed up one time in one of my journalism classes with, like somebody had interviewed the local dog catcher, and somebody interviewed the owner of an ice cream store, and I had an interview with the governor, and, other kids in the class are throwing their hands up. But so, I had a lot of opportunities for growth. And so, once again, a long answer to a very short question.
And when you're doing these games, especially in your younger years, are you remembering the games? Are you into the games? Are you rooting for a specific team? I know you all say we're objective and we just want to call a great game, but, do you get caught up in it? And looking back at it now, can you remember a lot of the games that you did?
I remember quite a few. I do remember that, I'll never forget the 1983 MAC title game. Ohio won it 59-56 at Bowling Green, and Bowling Green had just beaten us a few weeks before in a low scoring game. And I remember calling, some of the general aspects of a lot of those games. I remember a comeback win trailing in the rain at Kent State in football in November of 83, and scoring 21 unanswered in the fourth quarter for a 21-20 win. I remember doing a high school game with you and a kid named John Smith from Stanford Catholic hit a shot with 2 seconds left to force overtime, and then in double overtime hit the winning shot with like a second left. And then throughout my career, and I had a gap in the play-by-play world in my life. I got out of college. I didn't call another live game till the late 90s when I did some stuff with public TV. I actually did color commentary on a couple of state championship games, and then did some play-by-play of some state title games. And then with a regional sports network that started in the Southeast, got back into the play-by-play thing. But then for 11 years, I was Clemson's football and radio play-by-play guy. And there were some really memorable moments there, and some really touching personal moments there too. And then now, since my Clemson world kind of changed abruptly in April of 2014, I've averaged about 60 to 65 games a year on either ESPN Plus or a regional network, or on CBS Sports Network. I've done some games, and on Raycom Sports, I've done some games. And there are certain moments of games that I remember. You'll always remember certain games that you do.
After you finish doing a game and you're driving back, or you're, with your team, your crew, or are you doing a 360 on the evening, and are you critiquing yourself?
Yeah, great question. I'm often remembering points in a game. And like, for example, and, you just don't show up, hey, it's time to do a game. There's like the football games we do. I've got a game this week in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And that began, it began in the summertime when I kind of knew which games I was doing and all the different teams. And I made these charts that I use, and I made dummies of them, filling in as many names that are going to be in certain positions on the depth chart or whatever. And then last night I finalized it all for this game. So last weekend I did the Sanford Western Carolina game, and our preparation includes not only, getting charts ready, making notes, whatever. Then we have a conference call with the coaches on Thursday, in which for about half an hour, talk to them, ask them questions about specific things, kind of get a vibe. And then we also have a production call with the production crew, and we have plans. Certain, like this week, they're in the opening of the game, we're going to feature 2 running backs that happen to be from the same hometown, one from either team. That's pretty cool. Inside of the game, we have a couple of feature segments. One is about the fact it's 10th year anniversary of Chattanooga finally breaking through and winning the SoCon title after like a 30-year gap. And so we'll have some visuals of that. And then for the Citadel, their head coach has been in like 30 jobs, and we're going to kind of do a little graphic of all the different places he's been. And so planning all of that. But to your point, driving away Saturday, we had a 5-hour weather delay in the game we were doing. And I had it written down on a chart next to me. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. And it was one of those progressively like, well, we hope to start by 4:20. Another lightning strike, we've been pushed back. So anyway, after the game, I'm like, I missed an opportunity because on one of the conference calls with the Sanford coach, he mentioned Lightning on Wednesday had curtailed their practice. And I missed an opportunity. And it's whatever. It's a little thing. A lot of the nuggets that I prepare for, I was able to work in. But stuff like that, I'm reliving all the time. And every so often it's gratifying. Someone will tweet me or send me a text or email me, hey, I heard your game and I really like how you described that play. So, but yeah, I'm always everything I do, I'm evaluating. I mean, I've probably done in my 6 and 11 sports guy TV career, 20 to 25,000 shows. Most of them are just say you do them. It's, but then there are times where if I didn't hit a mark the right way and didn't, a lot of times I'm ad-libbing it, but sometimes I'm writing it and I'm thinking, gosh, I could have done that better. And sometimes I have an opportunity after the 6 or 7 o'clock show, then we'll have a 10 and an 11 o'clock show, and I can kind of revise it and maybe do it better than I did earlier.
Now when you got out of school, to your point earlier, you went into the studio and became assistant anchor, head anchor or whatever. And was that by design, or did just the way the careers were at that point in time taking you out of that play-by-play?
That was trying to get a first job wherever I could get a job. And I don't know if you remember this. I probably told you about it. I went exactly 2 months from the day I flipped the tassel to the day I got the phone call that I got my first job. And I was a weekend guy at the CBS affiliate in Florence, South Carolina. Happened to be owned by a company that owns where I'm sitting right now. And I was a weekend guy. I just wanted to get a job and work. And again, I was willing to work 24/7, 365. Get down there, had to do some news reporting, but was also doing weekend sports. But even when I was doing news reporting, that at night I'd go out and cover a game or something in that area. They didn't sign me to a contract. They were supposed to, they didn't. So 6 months later, a buddy of mine called me at an NBC affiliate in West Virginia and said, our weekday guy is leaving. And I gave the news director your name. So back then, the internet didn't exist. So I put a tape together of some of my sportscasts, either put it on a bus or sent it FedEx. I think I sent it FedEx. And the next day, the guy had seen it, gave me a call, interviewed, got my first job. I was 22, and it's like I had to take a 6 and 11 job. And I saw it, and it was a smaller market, but had a very nice set. It was in north central West Virginia. It wasn't too far from Pittsburgh. I didn't feel like I was out in the middle of nowhere. And I thought, if nothing else, I need reps. And this gives me 6 and 11 every night. And then was there for a year, went back to Florence to be the weekday guy. And then 3.5 years later, came up here in October of 1990. So my main job through all of this journey since 1990 has been at this CBS affiliate here as a weeknight sports guy. And then I've added a bunch of auxiliary stuff, a lot of freelance stuff with different entities that I've worked for over the years.
Yeah, I remember when you took that Florence job because we were both college graduates, but did not have quote unquote real jobs yet. And I started painting houses, and you were going to paint one of the houses with me, and we were getting ready to start, and you came over and said, hey, I got a job, I'm leaving.
I think I did one day of, yeah.
No notice. And I'm trying to talk you into staying, and looking back at it now, I was like, yeah, I get it, man, just go,
Yeah, I think I made the right, as tough as that was for me to tell you that.
Yeah, well, neither you or I are painters anymore, so I think both made the right decisions.
Well, although, in the homes that I've owned, the boss has had me paint several rooms, so I have recreated that role. Several rooms more than once, by the way.
There you go. Could have been even more of a perfectionist about it. So you finally land in Greenville, and you've been there for a long time now. And as you know, I told you, Optimal Bio has opened up a practice there a few months ago. What's the community like? I mean, you've been there forever, and I think it's the longest place you probably ever lived in your life. And kind of walk us through how great Greenville is.
I mean, I often tell people I wish I'd grown up here. I love the town you and I grew up in, and I think of Spartanburg, where I'm sitting, Greenville, which is in the middle of this region. I just think of it as the upstate, which is what we call this region. And to me, this whole area, and then up into Western North Carolina, which is also part of our TV market. But it is, in my opinion, the greatest place in the country to live, because Greenville and Spartanburg and a city west of Greenville, Anderson, have all made great strides over the years. They're great places. You've got the mountains within an hour drive. You can get to the ocean in a little over 2 hours and 20 minutes. Major cities on either side of you. Weather is very temperate, I think. Yeah, we get hot days. We get snow. And it's gone after 2 days. So you can enjoy it, but it doesn't hang around forever. You've got history around you, Charleston and Savannah. You've got, great, really, some really growing, really good school systems. My kids came through Greenville County schools. Spartanburg County has some unbelievable school districts. They've all really made strides. And all across the upstate, Anderson County, Pickens County, the other counties in our area. Educationally, from a college and university standpoint, we've got some great places too. So to me, it is just a fabulous place. It's, easy to get to the upstate of South Carolina. It's easy to get to Charlotte or Atlanta or anywhere on the planet. We've got one of the greatest airports in the country here, but you can get to the Charlotte airport or the Atlanta airport pretty quickly as well.
Yeah, the only negative I'd say is just that construction on 85. It seems like it never ends.
Yeah. I know, boy, it's getting there. And for this folks in this region, if you go up to Asheville, they've been working on I-26 forever. So it's not hard to see construction equipment, those bulldozer things and the backhoes. You can see them pretty much every few miles around here. So
let's talk a little bit about work-life balance. You mentioned earlier, you've done thousands of games,
I'm getting close to 1,000, by the way, in terms of play-by-play, just to cut you off there. I think I'm close. I've tried to count it up over the years. And I've broken it down to games I've done live, games I've done tape delay, but I'm pretty sure that I'm right around 1,000.
But this time of year, and actually pretty much every season, you're gone on the weekends. Usually a Saturday's taken or a Friday night or whatever. And being married, especially when your kids are younger, that's prime time for family. So how do you handle the work-life balance?
And that was something getting into the business. And I, was asking questions, try to get to know as many people in business. And one of the things that when I was in college, I was petrified of is how am I going to have a wife and children and have some normalcy? And again, it all worked out in that realm. Life changed a lot in my 20s and went in different directions in the personal side of my life, but ended up with a fabulous wife, 2 children, wonderful children, and somehow, some way, and I was doing freelance stuff from the time they were really young, and one was 6 and one was 4 when I started doing Clemson games in addition to this job. And I just made it work. Now, there were some benefits to that. As my son got a little bit older, he'd start coming along to Clemson games with me. And he got to see things that a lot of kids don't get to see and experience things a lot of kids don't get to see. And, we just made it happen. There were games to go to. There were ballet recitals to go to. A lot of times it was getting off a plane and getting to one of those or, making it all work. And just like any other parent who would have to travel for a job, regardless of industry, I had to be out of town at times. But I can't say that I have the magic dust. I can't say I just added water and it all worked out, but we made it work out. We had certain gaps in the year that we could do a vacation. And, a lot of times we'd go on vacation. On the way back, we're going on vacation to the destination because there was a bowl game there. And then like on the way back, I might have had a basketball game and, they'd come along with that. So, they got to make a trip to Hawaii with me for a basketball tournament. That was really a cool thing that we may not have done as a family. I would just say, make sure you have faith in those around you, make sure you end up with the right person. And that's a big part of it. And everything else just kind of tends to fall into place.
Sounds good. So, what I was getting at is there are certain people out there that have, non-negotiables, I guess, where if they're working on weekends, they're going to take a Monday off. And I know your dad being a dentist, he's got people like me that have a toothache out of nowhere that he's got to see and what have you. And, he has to have some downtime just like everybody else does too. So I didn't know if there was, so what are you doing then from a personal standpoint? Do you go out and golf a lot? Do you, take long walks? Do you go to church? Like what do you do that, allows you to get your stress relief, so to speak?
Yep. Play golf a few mornings a week. And again, the benefit of having afternoon, evening hours. And, the golf was on hold while the kids were growing up. I'd play, but not as much. But again, with the hours I work, they're weird, but the benefit. One of the things I did growing up, so kids knew who their dad was. after the 6 o'clock show, for example, I'd drive home, have dinner. Maybe they'd already eaten, but at least I was around for a couple of hours. Then I'd come back and do the late shows. And in the summer times, again, my son, sometimes my daughter, they'd come back with me, and we got to hang out with that. The wife was, we go to church together. Weekends, even if I got a game out of town, sometimes I can work it. We can, have dinner together on a Saturday. Sundays we're around each other, even though I'm doing kind of preparatory work. We have a lot of time then. She's had a job for many years just to have something to do that has her in a school. So we might see each other early in the morning, but, we see enough of each other. I think, if she had to be around me more, I might have driven her even crazier.
Hey, maybe it works, right? From a health and wellness standpoint, obviously you're a healthy individual, but you're on the road a lot, and I got to believe it's a little bit difficult to, find nutrition sometimes. So how do you balance all that out?
In 2003, I lost about 70 pounds, and I wasn't like I was obese, but I just knew that, so my mantra has always been, I eat 2 meals a day. I try not to eat in between meals and, violate that rule. I have 1 dessert a day. I try to drink water as my primary drink. I'll enjoy other kinds of drinks or whatever here and there, but pretty much with meals, I drink water. My late 40s, I started getting a physical every year. I thought that was important to do, and I've done it every year since. I get out on the golf course a couple of days a week at least to get exercise, fresh air. Not really a walker, but again, I'm on the move a lot. And, in the course of a day, I'll climb steps enough and that kind of thing. I've never been to go to the gym and work out. I do 15 push-ups every morning. But I've never been a go to the gym workout guy because it's just not me. I really don't have that time. But I've made it work. And again, it's different for every individual. I think just doing basic things that you were doing in gym class as a kid can be enough in terms of conditioning and that kind of thing. But I do respect the personal gym industry and all of that. And there are some benefits that you can get going there too. But there's nothing really magic. And I just thank God every day that I've got my health.
So are you, when you said 2 meals a day, is it a breakfast dinner thing, lunch dinner thing? How would you describe that?
Usually a late morning, kind of either a breakfast or a lunch late morning and then dinner. Right after the 6, I usually have dinner. And then I do another hit at about 7:50 Eastern time. So those are the 2 meals each day.
And do you take any supplements?
I take the 81 milligram baby aspirin, and I do. When I was doing Clemson games every year around February, I would just start getting a terrible sore throat, and what would happen is, I finally just asked a medical person. They said, take one of these. It's the 24-hour allergy thing because I think I've got some allergy stuff, and I take those. Are literally the only 2 things I take, and at night I take that, and it's kept me in pretty good straight since.
I remember you had a roommate, I think might have been in Florence, and he was from the South, and he had those goody headache powders that he seemed to take all the time. I can't remember his name now, but he always had headaches. He was popping that stuff like there was no tomorrow. I just remember that. Any interesting, unusual, funny types of things that have happened in your career that you want to share with the audience?
So many that, so many crazy things, so many, being in 3 places at one time and, not really realizing I was in any one. Quick story at a game at Boston College when I was doing Clemson radio, I don't know, 2007 or 8, flew up that morning because it was a night basketball game Saturday morning. So I would often travel. If I traveled on the day of the game, I'd get out really early. Flew up there with the thought that I was going to fly back by myself commercially the next day. So I flew out of Charlotte to make it a direct flight. I always wanted to do direct flights on game days. Get up to Boston, and this forecast for a winter storm totally changed. So I had to be able to fly out that night with the team. And oftentimes with basketball, I would fly back with the team, but that wasn't the plan for this trip for whatever reason. So my car is in Charlotte. We're going to come back to the Greenville airport, so I don't have a vehicle. So I know if I can, with my radio engineer said, look, if, we'll go to your house, get your car, we can drive up there, and then I'll drive your car back, and then you can just whatever. But the point is, I'm landing at the Greenville airport on the tarmac without the ability to have a car. And I've got to get my car from Charlotte. We get off the plane and I look and there's this 30-foot long stretched limousine sitting there. And I'm thinking, okay, they're probably there to pick up the flight crew. And I'll bet you anything the guy couldn't go get a standard car because it's a Saturday night. And I walk over to the guy, and it helped that he lived in the viewing area. Hey, how you doing? He knew me. I didn't know him, but I introduced myself. I said, you're here for the flight crew to take him home. Yeah, I am. I said, I live 10 minutes from here. Is there any way you could just drop me off? No problem, Pete. So I go over and I get my engineer. So the Clemson basketball team's getting off the plane. They're getting on their bus. I said, Jeff, gather your stuff up. We got a ride. And the Clemson basketball team, as they're getting on their bus, look over and they see their play-by-play guy and their engineer getting in this 30-foot long stretch limousine thinking, that's how I travel. And anyway, he drops us off at the house. We got my wife's car. And I heard anecdotes about that from the guys like, man, you really travel in style, don't you? So what could have been a disaster worked out that way.
That's funny. Everything always works out in the end, right?
Yep.
Any travel tips since you're on the road a lot? Seems like this day and age.
Plan whether I'm going an hour and a half away or, somewhere far away. I always have a personal itinerary. And I'm told, well, you can use your waves. That's fine. That's great. I always plan everything to, in other words, if I've got a game that's like a 6 o'clock game, I'm going to get to the stadium at 3. And I've got a routine for everything I do. But plan and have a backup plan, have a plan B and all that.
Good deal. Well, this is towards the end of the podcast, and we always ask our guests for 5 or 6 takeaways that you want to share with the listeners. So I'm going to throw it back to you. Yeah,
just try to always have as great a focus as you can have on whatever you're doing. Try to plan as best you can. I, again, have had it reinforced on a daily basis that I am a human. I am not perfect. I try to be perfect. I'm angry when, I make a mistake, but I still probably make more mistakes than I should make. But just be understanding of the fact that I've always found that whenever I plan something out and prepare as best I humanly possibly can, I get better results. And in the very few times and very early in my career, I learned if I wasn't prepared for something that the avalanche would quickly ensue. But my thought is always just plan for every scenario, both personally and professionally. And more times than not, that's when things tend to work out pretty well.
Sounds great. Well, this has been a treat, Pete. And for those out there, look for Pete on the CBS affiliate in Greenville, Spartanburg.
And the CW as well. We're also on a CW channel, too.
There you go. So I can pick you up here then.
Well, you can pick up some of our network stuff, yes.
Great stuff. Well, thank you again, Pete. I appreciate it.
Thank you, my friend. Good talking to you, and the very best of luck.
This has been a production of Optimal Bio. Optimal Bio is CEO Tyler Brannon, podcast host and partner Jim Baker, medical director Greg Brannon, production assistance by Core Media, Beth Grabencourt, administrator, Kevin Duthu, executive producer. The podcast can be found on our website, optimalbio.com, on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Our theme song is Sunwave by Paradiso, provided by Epidemic Sound.